Okay, Edwin, the stage is yours.
So, okay, I have one more thing to do. Okay, I would say welcome everyone. Nice to see many of you over here. I'm not sure how long the list already is, but it's building up every minute. Welcome in this first meetup session we have in the Agile at Industry and Technology. Okay, perfect. So I would like to have a warm welcome where hardware and software meet each other. Actually, I think the nice thing is that in the group of speakers, we had a discussion about this title. Should it be more bold, or should we try to confront things or ask questions? Actually, we didn't really agree, so I just left it in the title I originally invented. That was where hardware and software meet each other. But you can put a question mark behind it. You can call it bump together, crash together, whatever you like. Actually, it's about where hardware and software come together. So first of all, I'm Edwin Hanegraaf. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm an Agile coach. And I'm hosting this session, actually hosting this meetup together with Patrick Verbruggen, who is actually an independent coach from the Netherlands. Actually, Patrick and I know each other some years already because we've been working as Agile coaches in the same company some time ago. And I would like to have a warm welcome for our two additional speakers for today. One of them is Paolo Sammicheli, who is actually providing this Zoom link as well. So I really like that. And last but not least, and he is applauding already in my screen, I see that, Joe Justice. Very warm welcome from him. He got up very early this morning because he's in America just to be here with us, and that's great. So two technical things. First of all, we are recording this session. So if you are not want to be on the screen or in the recording, you can turn your screen off during the session, and even you can change your names if you want to. Another one is about the content. We are going to display all content as far as provided, and documentations and that kind of stuff. We're going to put that in the meetup group. We will store that there, and we'll send you messages about it so you can find it back later. So please leave your notebooks. Actually, you don't need pen and paper to write things down because we have everything available for you in a digital format. So what is this meetup about? Basically, it's on the edge between hardware and software. Actually, I'm a software guy, and I know that some of my colleagues are actually coming more or less from the hardware side, but actually it doesn't matter. It's about where both come together. And we see this typically in the community of the industry and technology kind of companies. When Patrick and I were brainstorming about this meetup group, we actually thought, okay, what would we like to achieve with this meetup group? I think that's a relevant question. First of all, you need a kind of a network, right? So you want to create a network of people who see the same kind of challenges, the same kind of problems, the same kind of goals. And the second thing is what we've been thinking about. Okay, it's not only about getting to know each other or actually be able to connect to each other. It's about sharing knowledge as well. And for that, we already thought of, okay, there are a lot of different kind of formats known in the Agile world, but two of them we find really attractive. One of them is the open space format, as everyone knows. And the second one is a kind of a fishbowl, where experts do an exchange on certain topics. Though those are our goals, and that means that it's limited by the thoughts of two persons, so to say. What we try to find out in this round, in this evening, is what your thoughts are, so we can extend our thoughts with your thoughts and creating an even better meetup. The program for tonight will be we are already in the welcome session, and we will immediately continue with the what is in it for me session, where we're going to explore together what do we need to make this meetup a successful meetup. Then, with each time an interval of 30 minutes, each of us, Paolo, Patrick, Joe, and I will give a presentation about a topic in our areas based on the expertise we are bringing into this world. And at the end, we have a 50 minutes closing down session where we already can have a look on a short questionnaire that I've been setting up, which you already can fill out after the first session. So, we are done here in this first round, and we are nice in time. We started a little bit late, but I did it quite well. So the first next step would be is that we are going to the first session is what is in it for me. And is there someone who already needs a break? I don't think so, right? So let's continue. I will now first start up my, one moment. Okay, I have to share again. Okay, what is in it for me? We would like to know what your thoughts are, what your questions are, what you're thinking of. And we are going to use Mentimeter for that. That's a well-known tool for getting online collaboration and info. As you can see on the top, there is a website, menti.com, and a code 99618705 that you can use on your phone or whatever to connect to this session. I can see that already someone joined. Two persons already joined. Oh, by the way, the code is always visible on top of the screen, I believe. So you can always add, join later. So basically our first question is, which questions did you bring into this meeting today? What would you like to explore in today's meetup? Okay, this is a nice question, actually posted as a comment. I would say, I would love to see what others are already doing and what they have learned from doing it. That's a great one. Let me see, I see that there are already 7 questions. How do I get to the next one? In this way, okay. Do you have examples of agile hardware development from the high-tech industry? We always get the same automotive example. That's nice. That's a good question. We have some speakers here, and I hope that they can maybe even include that kind of questioning into your in their sessions as well. So that's great. Great question. How are other people dealing with the combination of hardware and software in an agile environment? Yes, that's actually why we grounded this meetup group. So good question. How to slice electronics and or mechanic stories? Great, great. Oh, by the way, I'm not going to answer those questions now, but we take them with us for the exploration of future topics we can do, right? Some questions will be answered, but some certainly not. How much interest is out there to make steps in agile hardware? I believe there's still already a lot of interest in that, but I'm quite sure that people like Paolo and Joe will certainly give an answer to this one. Experiences in agile hardware from others. We got that one. Connect to agile hardware, folks, not a question, I believe. What is coming soon on Paolo's next book? Just ask Paolo, I would say. Good question. I thought Agile just doesn't work for hardware. That's challenging. How is the industry adapting when using Agile SDLC with a fixed price solution that includes hardware? That could be quite an interesting question, right? Redesign and hardware. What is the main problem hardware teams are facing when they work in an agile way of working? What comprises a full cross-functional hardware team in your context? I like the diversity in questions. That's great. That's great. Why is development different for hardware than for software? Good question. How to start with hardware and software agile approach? Is Agile really applicable to develop hardware in high volumes, as there are no much time to change the design once you start producing? Which issues are we facing working Agile in the industry where hardware and software are integrated and a fixed date and fixed scope are given? I would say that there is a comparison between, of course, hardware and software, because nowadays, even still in software land, there are fixed dates and fixed scopes. How to come to features with hardware such that the full cycle is addressed? Okay. Options for MVPs or increments in hardware at the end of a sprint. That's a concrete one. And number 21, how to deal with a team with different disciplines where not all members can pick up any task. I would say, and the number 22, how to motivate hardware people to work in a cross-functional environment. Good one. So first of all, thank you very much for these questions. I think that will help us in finding out which kind of topics could be interesting for all of us, and to bring with us in upcoming meetings. Of course, the speakers have been looking to the questions as well now. So if they can integrate them in their part of the presentations or whatever, feel free to do so. So what are your participation goals? I see a lot of things coming up. But I see two words that are coming out much bigger than the rest. That's learning and learn, which is basically the same. I even see things here as learn and get inspirations, learn and share. That's great, really great. IDs. People are looking for IDs. Ah, okay. Now we get learning, learn, inspiration, and share. Actually, this is the part what I always like most in when giving a presentation. Let do you the work.
Interestingly, I see hardware slicing came up twice. It was spelled differently, so they haven't amplified each other, but I can see it twice on there. So two people at least.
Ah, okay, yeah, yeah. But I think that's a relevant topic as well, because that's one of the challenges we find, right? Ah, now hardware slicing is now a bit more emphasized. Yeah, in general, you can see. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hardware slicing just became huge.
Sorry, Joe. Can you repeat?
Hardware slicing just became huge.
Yeah, that's most probably because you advise people to put that in, right? No, I'm joking. Actually, I see some behavioral things and I see some content things like electronics, hardware slicing, are more the hardcore part of the deal. Actually, things like inspirations and learn and share, but actually what we most of the times are doing in Agile kind of meetups. But still great. Okay. Thank you for this input. So let's move on to the next question we have. How can we keep you involved in this meetup?
Slicing hardware.
Exciting talks, engaging discussions and interactions. Coffee breaks. Yeah, I love that one.
It's Paolo.
So a lot of things coming up now. Great.
Is that you, Mr. Justice?
I think it's great to see that so many ideas on how we can do this. Actually, the fact that you're typing this is already helping in getting you involved. I see here some best practices. I'm not sure whether it was a typo or intentionally meant in this way. Yeah, some people have read the agenda, no bullets, I can see. Storytelling, real deals, be active. Industry examples, I think I love that one as well.
cheer for Edwin looks great. I don't know who wrote
Yeah.
it, but they did.
I can guess. Okay, great, great. Thank you very much for this. I love it. You can see with this many people how many different things we can come up with. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So, from my perspective, at least what I would like to invite you is to dare to share. Because I truly believe that a meetup community can only exist if the right people are coming. And we as a community are the ones who are driving that. So I think we should define which topics are interesting for us. So what we certainly not want to do is create a meetup that starts now and will die simply because only one or two persons define what's going to happen. And I think there are already a lot of meetup clubs doing that. And we want to be different on that. And we can't do that without you. So in order to dare to share, we would like to ask you to fill out the questionnaire. And in the questionnaire, which is actually a questionnaire tool I've been using, LlamaPoll, I've already sent you an email to everyone just before we started this meetup with the link to that questionnaire. It's only 10 questions, so it will take you roughly 5 minutes to fill it out. Oh, and basically the intermediate results, I will share you that with you at the end of this evening. So we can see where people come from, what your needs are, and you can have some thoughts about it. So it's not about that you must fill it out now. I think if some people can already fill it out, we can already move forward with this. So that's basically what I would like to share. And I'm kind of fast, so to say. I planned 30 minutes for this session and it only took me about 15. That's great. So what we can do, being agile as we are, maybe a good idea to find a few questions that we could already have some expertise thoughts on. Joe, Paolo, Patrick, you willing to join me in this?
Sure.
So let's see if we have some questions that are interesting already to give at least some thoughts on. Okay, I will show the question and just shout if you think, oh, I can say something interesting about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I see Joe nodding. I think, Joe, you actually have some experience with this, right? Maybe you can share a couple of seconds on it.
Yeah, so well, actually, this is a topic that I'll be presenting about. So we might want to save this one.
Yeah,
do that. Just invite people to stay.
Excellent. Yeah. Maybe another one then, Edwin?
Yeah, I move on. No issue.
This one's super interesting and is not the focus of my presentation. I'd actually like to ask Paolo if he would take this one. And Paolo, you can send it back to me if you want, but I'd love to hear your stance on this.
which issue are we facing working Agile in the industry where hardware and software integrated and fixed date and fixed scope are given? And well, first of all, if you have fixed date, fixed scope, and the only things you can change is the time or the quality. So, but this is nothing to do with hardware and software integration. I mean, it's a general project management problem. We have the iron triangle, the scope, the time, and the cost, and you can only change. If you fix something, you can only change the remaining parts. So that sounds to me as a question for somebody who didn't try it yet, adopting this approach, because I don't have any client having problem with this. I mean, different from doing traditional project management. The iron triangle is there anyway. So I don't know, Joy. I think probably if we save time, we can start early and cover the question at the end. That maybe because again, when I will show some examples and pictures from my clients, maybe it will be easier to relate. Right? What do you think, Joe?
Well, I have a question actually about this. So this is the problem, that do you see that a lot with hardware, software products? That the date is fixed and the scope is fixed? Because I think that's the issue.
The scope is fixed because somebody fixed it. I mean, it's not that in nature, because in reality, it fixed it up to something goes wrong. When something goes wrong, you have to do something, right? So, or you change the time, or you change the scope, or you change the scope, the cost, or you change the scope, or you change the quality. In software, we have seen a lot reducing quality so that we maintain the three parts of the iron triangle fixed. So the thing is, the market is there, is waiting for something, and you have to deal with the given time, the given cost, because otherwise your competition will be cheaper and your cost will increase. And the scope.
Okay, but let me rephrase the question. Do you see companies which are developing a product with hardware and software related not doing this? Do you have experience with that?
They change the scope constantly, and also dates change constantly. When you develop something that is innovative, the anticipated the cost and the date and the scope is a wish. It's not that somebody can see the future. So it's normal that dealing these continuously. The difference is if you have short feedback and visibility on if we are delivering or not and what we are actually delivering, you have the ability to, when me and Joe, we went to the Saab aeronautics to see how they were building the jet fighter. They said, we want to know the bad news as soon as possible. So using this kind of approach, you see the problems a little bit ahead, a little bit earlier, and so that you can have some more time to think creatively how to play the card that you got in your hand. So that's basically the. And so when people say, well, when in hardware, then we have to mass produce the things. Yeah, of course. So that's why the earlier you get the bad news, the better, because in software you have instances, then it's the cost of duplication, it's almost zero. In hardware, it's not. So you want to know the bad news the earliest as possible. So that's basically why we use these. It's not that you do Agile so that I can change the scope and the time. I do Agile and Scrum so that I know the bad news earlier. And if I had to change the scope and the time, I have more opportunities, more options. If I discover it the day before launching mass production, maybe I have less options. That's what we enjoy. We had seen around. We had seen when we met these clients doing this stuff.
Thank you, Paolo, and thank you for asking that question, Eric.
Okay. Great question, Eric. Just absolutely awesome and right on point. Maybe we can at least think of fixed scope and fixed date as not to exceed. And if that's true, if there are limits, not as in, if they're upper bounds, then we still have a huge amount of agility, right? We can throttle everything, we can adjust everything as long as we don't exceed those two things, if we can. So if we can think of those as not to exceeds as limits, or even better as warning points, maybe they are exceeded in extreme cases, but it's a warning point, it's a reevaluation point. Well, that could also be called an inspect and adapt point, which is super agile. If we look at fixed dates, for example, Volkswagen's ID4 software over the air, an awesome project, many very good people working on it. It had a fixed launch date. It wasn't perfect by the fixed launch date. Well, does that mean it was fixed scope? Well, that's just a word. What it was is it keeps getting better. So if these are inspect and adapt points, we can call it fixed scope if we want. Many people probably think it's fixed scope, fixed budget, when in fact it's iterating quality.
I was the one that brought in this question because I'm working in a customer at the moment. It's working completely like this. We have to deliver a complete solution. The scope is fixed. It was already fixed when we started. And now the date is also fixed. And the whole thing is that you're working very hard because you want to service the organization, but it had nothing to do with working agile. But still the software part of the company wants us to work agile. And when the project is sold with a contract that is so hard and that is not negotiable, that's what I'm fighting with. And that's why I think it's so very important to talk about it.
We can at least do some of the practices that some of the coaches in here are famous for doing. For example, Paolo Sammicheli taught me about the liftoff technique and buffet planning years ago. And he had absorbed those from other Agile coaches and customized them and helped develop them. Well, that can still be used, right? We can still have, for example, some of the people in this meetup might be trained Scrum Masters. They might be skillful at removing impediments. We might have some Kanban experts here that are skillful at balancing flow across the team. So we can still do those things. Those practices fit even with fixed scope, fixed date. But I won't say it's not a difficulty. If the contract's already set, if the scope's already set, if the date is already set, there's a lot of Agile we can't use. We can't use the product owner as an entrepreneur to make trade-off decisions in real time of what's built and what's not. That's not accessible. We don't get to do meta scrum as a funding pattern. That's not accessible. So I agree with you. A lot of really powerful practices and parts of the mindset don't fit then. But the good news is there are also many practices like liftoff, like buffet planning, like team launch that still work. And Kanban flow optimizations and visualizations like a Scrum Master are still going to be meaningful. So there's pieces, there's some good news.
Okay, thanks.
Also, I want to add something. I will also start my video so you can see who I am. I want to add something to that. In my experience, at least in where I come from, I think it's the same thing what Arnold is talking about, is that we do have a fixed scope, but in a multidisciplinary organization, you also have a rather heavy hierarchy. And what, in my opinion, goes wrong is that your fixed scope is determined by the one above you, let's say a project leader or whatever, and you're not actually knowing what the customer needs. So in this situation, what a product owner could do is try to skip all the layers and find out what the customer really needs. And in my experience, that is usually less than what is in the Excel list or whatever you get before you. So that's try to understand what the customer needs. That's the main thing, I think, in this case.
Okay, thank you, all of you. I am going to, I think this is a valuable discussion we just had. And I think that's a great thing we could take as a kind of a topic to bring into one of the next sessions, right? Because it's really a burning issue, if I can hear it correctly. And this is basically about choice, whether you look at it from the negative side or from the positive side. You find ways what you can do rather than that you try to fight what you can't do. So thank all of you for sharing this with all of us. Given the fact that it's now 9 past, in 6 minutes, we will start the next session from the presentation by Paolo. So I would like to give you a short chance to grab a cup of coffee or something, a small snack or whatever you need. Oh, and don't forget to dare to share and fill out the questionnaire. So I see you back in 5 minutes, I would say. And the next one up is basically the talk of Paolo Sammicheli, and he's going to talk about effectiveness and efficiency, the best of two worlds. So, Paolo, feel free and go ahead.
Thank you, Edwin. So let's see a little bit about this topic about combining Lean and Scrum in an industrial context. I am the guy on the picture, so I work as an Agile business coach, and I am a Scrum trainer for Scrum Inc. So I work with Jeff Sutherland, and one of the two authors of Scrum, and I'm here because I'm the author of the book Scrum for Hardware. That basically is the book that first documented how pioneers like Joe Justice, that is going to speak at the end of this meetup, implemented Scrum to building something. So hardware, now in the hardware world that comes more from the United States meaning. So in the United States, hardware is everything that is tangible. Here in Europe, we tend to think about hardware, about the physical part of the computer. So by hardware, what I mean in my book and in Joe Justice material, we mean something tangible, a tangible product that might contain some software, because today software is everywhere, but there is also electronics, since the software needs something to run. There is mechanical parts, meaning any atoms that have a special function, and covers with composite material or plastics, basically, again, atoms that they follow principles of aesthetics or also aerodynamics. There might be an engine, there might be something that moves, there may be something that flies, maybe it's something that goes in space. All together, how we can develop from concept to cache, so not only on the card, on the computer, also building the stuff using a framework like Scrum. That's what I covered in the book, and the stories of the pioneers that first implemented this kind of stuff. Now the book is at the second iteration, it's a second edition, and contains some use case studies that one of them I'm gonna present it. My next book, I just announced it on LinkedIn, is Scrum in AI. So me and Joe, we've been doing Scrum in hardware for more than 5 years at this point. And so I needed to make it a little bit more complex because otherwise it was too easy. So the next step is to have hardware products with on top the AI-based application running the entire system. So how to have something even more complex? Well, with Scrum, we can develop that. So for my first book, Scrum for Hardware, you can download it for free if you are fast enough. This link is going to work for 1 month. And if you read it and you find it useful, please pass it around, because it's a Creative Commons book, so you can copy it with your friends and colleagues without feel guilty that you stole anything from me. This book is it's a kind of ultimate edition. So I will keep updating the same book. There is not going to be different editions. So I'm going to change only the cover just so that people realize that it's really new. but you will not need to pay again to have a new edition. So the second edition is different from the one I released in the beginning in 2017, because it contains a third part that includes some case studies and practical examples. I can speak about this topic for 7 days, no joking. The longest training I did in a company in my career, it was 7 days from 9 to 6. And so how to learn more. YouTube, I try to have this YouTube channel with videos so that you can, if you don't have the time to read a book, you can see the videos. And LinkedIn, I published there my article, and my website where you can download the slides of all my case studies. So what is Scrum for hardware? I've been observing that Scrum for hardware is something being a little bit more challenging than normal Scrum in software, includes many practices and processes and values and principles from different domains. So I kind of represent it like a iceberg. So what everybody's talking about is the process. So it's a Scrum. Most of the time, the product is too complex to be developed by a Scrum team that needs to be a group of people, less than 10 people, to make it nimble and to reduce waste. So if you have something more complex, you will need something as a team of teams. A group of teams working together and helping each other in order to achieve the team of teams goal. And so that's how I've seen developing big stuff around with Scrum and a sort of scaling patterns. We will talk again about patterns, the book about patterns later. So practices, how you can solve a single problem in specific domains. We have multiple practices because you don't know if the practice works or not until you try it in that context. So we want to have competing practices so that you have alternatives. And that's a lot of stuff I documented in my book. I've seen around being helpful in the context of developing hardware with Scrum or even without Scrum. Under the water, the more important part, things that you cannot copy, you cannot steal it, you cannot buy by asking a consultant or a coach to come in your company are the principles. So we need to have people, especially managers, to start thinking and following principles. What I've seen working in this context is the principles, of course, from the Agile Manifesto and from Lean in general. The extreme manufacturing is the creation of George Justice, the set of principles and practices that helps developing physical products very, very fast in an iterative way. Complex thinking, if we think that we can fix the scope, coming to the previous question, because we know everything at the beginning, means that is not going to be a complex problem, because scientists say it is providing us clear understanding that if something is innovative, means that it's complex. And if it's complex, you will discover more things of actually building it than just sitting in your desk and thinking in the future about it. So how we deal with this? We need also to have this complexity thinking be embodied on the management. The product chart, the Agile management are gonna be fast, the values, Agile and Scrum, because the last slide that will be provided in PDF form contains some links. So you can go and pick up the things you are interested by yourself on the internet or on my book. So my book contains multiple case studies. The first two, the one that built the first edition of the book, on one side of the complexity, Wikispeed. Well, Wikispeed was already quite complex because it was supposed to be the more ecological car at that moment, but was built only by volunteers using an approach, an open source approach. So it was complex, but not, for sure not like a jet fighter. The sub-technologies is a fifth generation jet fighter. It's something, one of the things that most complex things I have seen. Together with Joe, I have seen other things also in aerospace, but it's under NDA, so we cannot talk about it. My first case study was at a house automation company. They produced a very complex house automation platform, and then followed a mechanical machinery, laser machinery, precision machinery built with Scrum entirely from design to assembling and building it. Pietro Fiorentini SPA is the one I'm going to present later. And there is also a restaurant in London from a friend of us, Ricardo's. It's in Chelsea. Go find it and see how Scrum can be implemented in something that looks like very outside the scope of agility, a restaurant run with Scrum, a very successful restaurant. In the COVID, they reinvented themselves overnight to responding to the new policies coming from the government. And soon we're going to have a fourth case study, a construction company, engineering company, very complex problems, because we are talking about railroads, tunnels, bridges, and rail stations. So everything about mobility. Let's talk a little bit about Pietro Fiorentini. There is the longest version on my YouTube channel, so you can see it there. So this company, so I presented initially this with another friend of mine, Andrea Provaglio, a very famous coach from Italy, and a person from the client itself, Andrea Granetti, that is a product owner there. So we are talking about a company that is an oil and gas company. They have 80 years of history, and they started in 1956 to export around the world. Today, they employ 1,700 employees, and they have production facilities in Italy and worldwide. This is a privately owned company, so it's not on the stock exchange. This is the best example of lean I haven't seen in my life, also counting companies that they say they are super lean, not like them. They are normally featured in every MBA about business agility and lean, and students go and in this company to see how they do lean. They have lean everywhere, also in the offices. Every month they have a one Kaizen week. Every month with 15 teams working only for an entire week on improvement, for a total of 3,000 man-hours per month. They don't have any consultancy firms. They employ only Japanese sensei that every month they fly from Japan directly to Italy to coach those teams. This is the most impressive and serious implementation I have ever seen, and they've been doing this for 2 decades. So why a company like this, very successful, they want to use also Agile and Scrum? Because they realize that with Lean, they achieve the efficiency, but with Scrum, they can achieve effectiveness. And so combining the two, they want to beat all the competition, be the best in the world in what they're doing, actually gas and distribution and oil extraction. So what we've done, we've been there for 2 years at this point, so it's not a new case study, it's all the implementation at this point. We implemented Scrum almost everywhere, so from, of course, software IT project, but also telecommunication projects, one project about rebuilding part of the facilities of the headquarters, plant, a new startup that was also remote, was in China, new hardware devices, and of course, products. And we are going to see one of the products that is was entirely developed with Scrum. So the product you see in the picture is a gas regulator, and it's not the product about the case study. The case study is about the production line for this product. So that's the story about the team that built the machine that builds the machine, using the Elon Musk definition of the production line. We started with Liftoff. So this book by Diana Latz and Alex Linise is a gold mine, because basically Liftoff is a way to start with the right fit your project. And basically Liftoff, it's a set of activities you have to do when you start, because it comes from experience. What made a project to fail, what we could have done in the beginning so that we didn't have this problem, that felt the lift-off model. And so with that, you can discuss about the purpose of the project, the align of what are the rules and the context we are going to operate. To do the purpose, I invented something that, if we can call a canvas an invention, basically is a variation of the vision board from Roman Pichler. I call it this basic canvas. Basically, it creates the basic conversation, what means value for that project. So we discuss about for whom is this project, for whom is not, the needs and desire from them, the obstacles they found out. So the left side, it's the external world, the market, and the right side, solution, what we provide to these people, what are today the alternatives, the business expectation, and the risk. You can download it for free from my website. It's just a page. And so we created 4 tables, post-its, and we clustered, we eliminated doubles, and we had this big poster that stayed in a team room. So we formed the team. Of course, we are in production. So we have blue collars working together to white collar in one team, no division, no discussion, only focus on the same goal. If you wonder how it was this room, we were in a plant. So I had to wear the special shoes for safety to go and coach them. Very uncomfortable shoes, to be honest. And so here in this space, they could have ideas about the production line, prototyping something, and also build and test it. And they were using this thing called the Lean 3Ps, that is basically an iterative incremental approach. The only difference that these approaches doesn't change at all the organization. So it's meant to be a cross-functional process on top of a siloed organization. The difference is with Scrum, you have a cross-functional team. So I said, okay, let's keep the process as it is. So let's keep the things as you do. Let's do it just inside the Scrum team. So I said, if I wasn't here, how could you create the first product backlog? What the list of the things that we have to do during the development? They say, well, we have this architectural fishbone that is representing how to assemble the product. I say, oh, fantastic. Well, this is like a user story mapping. This is the user journey, because your user is the operator. And so we started creating the story, the green one, something like, as an operator, I want to insert the valve in the regulator. As an operator, I want to close the cover. And then with the red stickies, we highlighted the things that we know that we don't know. So, okay, this part is not clear. We need to talk with the other team. So visualizing what was already decided and clear from the other team developing the product, we could create a first backlog and reduce the risk. And also having parallel development, because traditionally you first create all the product, then you think about the production line. Here we were in parallel. The product team started just a little bit before than us. And the other team was my colleague coaching them. And so they started saying, let's do the X10, X50, X250. What the hell is this? Well, we started with cardboard and we create a very simple prototype. So we decided the input, the output, and then the step we need to do in that station. Then we build a prototype, the 50, with wood. Why these numbers? Because compared to designing everything at the computer, building a physical prototype reduce the risk by 10, and every time increase by 5. So the 50 reduce the risk 5 times the 10, and the 250 again. So the idea is the 250 was already something working. Of course, you cannot give it to an operator because it doesn't respect the safety measure, but it was actually working. So the idea is that the production line was something that in the beginning was producing something like 1 piece per hour, and then adding some parts was moving to 10 pieces per hour, and then 1,000 or 10,000. So it was completely an incremental product, a completely modularized product. In order to have that, with the 10, we decided a non-stable interface. Joe Justy will talk about non-stable interface, how important they are when you decide your architecture. That needs to be agile. If you want to develop an agile way, you got to have an agile architecture. That's the Conway's law. So the architecture of the product reflects the communication. So if you have a tightly coupled product, you will have a lot of dependencies between your teams. The Springboard, multiple patterns. There is the new book from Jim Coplien about the Scrum patterns titled A Scrum Book. In my book, there is the reference to that book. So you will get my book for free. And so you can pay and buy the pattern book. That is a gold mine of solution. I implemented all these patterns, the interruption buffer, the Scrum, yesterday weather, and swarming. I love these guys because they hate to wait. And so in order to reduce the feedback loop, they use any possible way. And of course, 3D printing. So we had the body of the gas regulator in 3D printed in a matter of 1 week. And so we could start thinking how the piece could flow through the production line. And the sprint reviews, we needed mic and the speakers because you know, in a factory you have a lot of noise, and that was very, very interactive because stakeholders coming from other teams and management, they can try the product, and also the operators, they were providing feedback saying, well, this is not really comfortable, this is not error prone, we should have something more here. So it was really a co-creation between people that was forming a very cross-functional team, a fully cross-functional team, from people designing the computer to people actually building the stuff. So the longest version of this talk, I'm about at the end of my time, what the company says about this experience. With the team, they implemented Scrum. They already have seen that the effectiveness comes together with efficiency, combining Lean 3P, and Scrum. Also, the tendency to have siloed roles that people don't know what the other people are doing. With having a cross-functional team, there is an increasing sharing of know-how, and also an increased distributed leadership, and having stable team and work flowing to stable teams reduce the time to change a priority from weeks to hours. So that was really responding to change over following a plan with a stable team, cross-functional, empowered. You can also deal all the uncertainty that comes from building something that is innovative. And the sprint review is very useful because with the Lean 3P alone, it's like kind of a meeting. So you send an invitation. This makes the fact that if a stakeholder is doing Gamba, working in a production development area, they see something, they provide unstructured feedback. And this is slowing the team down because every 2 hours, every 4 hours, you get a different person providing feedback. Instead of saying, come to the review, and we structure the feedbacks in a single time, in a single time box. That helped a lot. And of course, a single board for everything. Things to be built, things to be fixed, and emerging work or interruption simplify, and also improvements simplified a lot because when you love boards, you say, okay, let's make a lot of boards. And then it's very difficult to understand where the information is in which board. So having only one board really helped you out. Of course, you have to involve everybody with a kind of awareness session, otherwise they still think in an old way. And in the beginning, they are kind of disoriented with this new approach. And of course, it's not like playing soccer that you can remove and add players when you want, when you need. When you form a team, they kind of develop a team spirit, and so it's a little bit demoralizing removing people. So when you form the team and you have to think a little bit and not just do the first things you come into your mind. And of course, management. But here it's really on board because it's from the owners decided to experiment Scrum. So we have basically the support of the ownership of the company, and it's really key if you want to do something, because you have to implement an entrepreneurial approach in what teams and product owners do in the development. So I'm perfectly in time. It's 39, 1 minute ahead. You won't believe I'm Italian, except for my accent, since I'm so in time. Edwin, last minute for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, Emma already announced she has a question. I hope it's a short one because you're really in time. We don't have much time left, but nevertheless, I will give Emma please ask your question to Paolo.
My question is that, because to be honest, what he mentioned about the restaurant and the car and public transportation, we use the AI technology in China. We did have, in Hong Kong, we have a Robert's restaurant in day back like 3 or 4 years ago. And during 2018, there was two two buses test about the AI in the public transportation in the Shenzhen. And then after 1 year until now, it's very successful. But because also we also in China, they test this AI car, you know, the driverless car in the mountainous area, especially in the raining area. It's very difficult to control about the speed, because when in the it's in the tropical area, especially in the south of China, like southwest, like Guangxi, Guangdong, Yunnan, Sichuan, this mountainous area is not safe. And once in crash, they cannot control and the car just fall down. So I think the AI technology for me, according to the research I have done in the past couple of years, I think it's very suitable. It's very suitable for the big cities, cosmopolitan city, and it's also very suitable for the country where, like Russia or Western Europe or the Australia somewhere, they lack the driver, you know, they lack the people to drive. Because I have been to Europe for a couple of times. I know it's very flat, especially in the Netherlands. It's very safe. It's very flat. So I think this AI technology, because till now we just do more investment and research and marketing and try for the public transportation, for the car, and for the restaurant. I think it does help a lot to the every country too, because nowadays we lack of laborers, you know. So I think it's a good revolution. But according to the current situation in China, we try, but it's only useful and for the coastline and the flat area, but not suitable for the mountainous area and the rainy or sleepy area. And this is what I want to share with everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Emma. Thank you, Paolo, for your talk. I think this was great to share some insight on this. We are now a little bit behind, but that is not the fault of, in this case, Paolo, so it's no issue. And in a few minutes, we will continue and we'll come back with the next item, which is my item. Agility is not a silver bullet, how to use a revolver more effectively. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to fill out the questionnaire. I just have seen that already 11 persons did. That's already great. Thank you very much. So see you in a few minutes.
I will take a little bit of time to introduce our next speaker, which is Edwin, by the way. Before I do that, thanks again to Paolo. Really nice story. Nice to see, always nice to see a use case with actual pictures and everything. So Edwin, there is something about a silver bullet, so I'm very curious. And Edwin and I go back several years when we worked together at Van der Lande as Agile coaches. Edwin more on the software side. I was more on the R&D hardware side. But please take the floor, Edwin.
Thank you very much. So I will first start sharing my screen. Let's see. I have to do that this way. Everyone can see my screen now, right?
Yep, got it.
Okay. Okay, title. Agility is not a silver bullet, so how to use the Evolve more effectively. So to start with, I would like to start with an experiment. That means that we will be split up in 2 groups, and you will hear and you will automatically assign to one of the groups, and in each group you will get a kind of an assignment. So Paolo, could you please support me?
Yes. So I just created the two rooms. Now, Edwin, let me see where you are. So Edwin, you are in the second room, and Patrick, you are in a first room. All right, so you are ready, set it up. I will stay here to technical support. So the room will close automatically in 2 minutes with a countdown. Sorry about that. With a countdown of 30 seconds, right?
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, so you will receive a pop-up asking you to join another room. If you say yes, you will be teleported like in Star Trek in another call with Edwin or Patrick. They will show you something and then you will get back here. See you in 2 minutes and 30.
Thank you.
Go. Now you're mute.
You're right, I'm not on mute anymore. Nice feature, that muting, the be mute. Okay, let me see. I will go back to my presentation again. So we started with the experiment, right? So thank you. Okay, what I'm going to talk about is how Agile is often introduced, or at least how I see it. We have a plan, we want to become Agile, so we start an Agile transitions. We do that by planning it, completely outline it from start to end. The next thing is that we hire an enterprise coach to select the right framework to do it. And after that, we offer all our teams a one-day training on how to do it. So the teams will implement it, right? And at the end, we follow a checklist to verify whether they did it in the right way. And we become unhappy and disappointed. So who am I? I'm Edwin. I'm from the Netherlands, already said, so I'm 51 years old. I'm married, have 2 children. I've been working at a lot of different companies, most times as a consultant. And lately, the last 1.5 years, I've been working in Germany at Alta Solutions and working for some German companies as well. I started with software engineering, and at a certain moment I made a switch to requirements engineering, and the last 11 years I've been busy as Scrum Master, Product Owner, and Agile Coach in the Agile community. So let's look at complexity. I think this is one of the many pictures about complexity. I think most of us are familiar with this. Complexity is something that we should take into account. And if I look at complexity, most times the product we're creating, and certainly software products, are typically in the complex domain. You cannot completely predict how it works, or at least trying to cover every item is not that simple. But in addition to that, I believe that the human being creating that software is even more complex than the product we are trying to create. because as far as I'm concerned, human beings are complex. And that implies that if you have a team of more individuals or more developers, is even more complex. Or at another level, having multiple teams working together in creating a product or a project sometimes. Even organized in different structures within a company, adding again another layer of complexity, ending up with a full firm, which is really very complex to work with. Actually, there are a lot of things you can say about complexity. I think there are two relevant items you should always have a look at. First of all, what we Agilists really love is fast feedback loops. So we are always looking for a way to have fast feedback on whatever we're doing. And the second thing I think that's relevant is autonomy, mastery, purpose, introduced by, or at least described by Mr. Pink. And it's about what really motivates us. It's not about money, it's actually about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So my question is why do we think that waterfall or a waterfall approach is helping us forward? What do I mean with that? We have an idea. We want to become agile, right? Oh, and we create a long, detailed plan how to get there. And we hire an enterprise coach who selects the right framework or whatever system for that. And we give a one-day training to our teams, expecting them to implement this methodology. And of course, at the end, we check again and get again disappointed. So let's cycle back to our experiment. Question, and I have to stop sharing now shortly, otherwise I cannot see what the results are. Who of group 1 is still doing what being asked for? Please raise your hands.
I don't understand the question.
The first group 1, breakout room 1, got an assignment. Who's still doing that?
I think no one.
Patrick,
No one. Oh, that's a great result. From the second group, who has done anything at all? Are there results from the second group, from my group, so to say?
I haven't done anything, but I have an
Nothing. We did nothing.
Yeah, I've been watching people.
idea.
Yeah. Okay. So people didn't really do things. Yeah, I think it's great. I put a disclaimer in my document, so that's good. I will show you in a few moments. Okay, I will go back to my presentation first. One moment. Because the second group, I will explain what I did, or at least what I did was the first group was asked to put a pen or a pencil horizontal in front of their face if their age was below 40. For the group 40 years and older, I asked to do it in a vertical way, so right up, just as shown here.
You're not sharing something
No, it didn't share? Okay. Well, thanks for this notification, because then I most probably forgot to click on share. Yes, I did. So moment. Okay, you can see the screen now?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. So the first group got this assignment. Like I said, based on age, put a pencil in front of your nose. The second group, I did something different. Well, we share my screen again. One moment, I will go to the presentation where we were, because it's not in presentation mode. Okay. The second team, I asked to observe what the first team did and copy that and be patient, and that they were getting more points than the first group to become number one. If no one from group one actually did or even tried to do this experiment, then it's hard to copy, of course.
But we still had 2 points, so.
Yeah, that's great. So we won. Hey, great achievement. So what was this experiment about? I will share you the expectation and what the results should have been. I believe that normally group 2 would have done the experiment better than the first group. The disclaimer is that because humans are complex, I cannot predict how you are going to act. So actually, how did someone share this? I observed a lot of people, but I didn't see anything happening. That can happen because this is a small, relatively small group. I did it only once. And of course, the assignment sounds simple, but maybe it's not that simple to do. The reason why I think why the first group does not that well is because if you tell people to do something, you keep the content to yourself normally, and people do not have the tendency to follow that. So it was more or less command and control. You've been told to put the pen in front of your nose. People have the tendency to move that pen away at the moment you turn around and you've not been observed. In the second group, I shared with the team what the idea was, that they had to try to copy. I told them they had to wait for a few minutes, and I've been challenging them by saying, hey, you get more points and we want to win. That's not a guarantee that they get motivated, but at least I tried to motivate people to join. So I'm circling back now with many companies within the industry and technology domain. What I actually, from the software side, because I am from the software side originally, what I see is one of the issues we run into is that most of these companies started with a piece of hardware. And I just learned from Joe, hardware in the American way. So it's about something tangible. That's what they're good at. That's what they started with. That is why those companies exist. And in the beginning, there was only a little bit software added to it, most times to install something or to register or whatever. And in due time, we made that software more complex. We added a lot of complex to the product, basically. So that the software and the hardware start working together. So that means that the software part becomes bigger, basically. And nowadays, it's even so big that we even made it more complex with BI and AI. We are adding so much complexity in the software range, and we're putting things in the cloud as well. And that makes the software part so big that compared to the starting point, actually the whole world changed for these kinds of companies. So I think it's up to you to choose for the silver bullet. That means that you can have a plan and you can outline completely a full plan on how to do an agile transition. Oh, and hire an enterprise coach to select the right framework and give a one-day training to your teams. Oh, and expect the teams to implement it and verify with the checklist in order to get there and get disappointed. Or learn how to use the revolver more effectively. So what about not selecting everything ahead and just start with small steps, right? finding out what works for us, trying to understand why software and the bigger part of software within this kind of companies is increasing over time and how we can deal with that. Oh, and by the way, of course, if possible, use valid or validated agile methodologies for hardware as well, as just been told by Paolo and by Joe in the beginning, in the first meeting as well. So I think that teaching is a great thing to do, but you should not do only teaching. I think that coaching the system, so for instance, that you think about, okay, let's select a framework and we will coach everyone how to use this system in the best way. Yeah, still interesting, but not good enough. I believe that you should coach the people. Make sure that the people get the tools in their hands to do the right things and get support. Because, as I already indicated earlier, we human beings are far more complex than the products that we create. And for that, amongst a lot of different tools and things we can use, I believe that using short feedback loops is a very strong way in moving forward. And besides that, because we're human, we need the agile principles and values that lie below that surface. As already very nicely depicted with the iceberg from Paolo, I would say. That's from my side. Other people with questions, or at least one short question, given the time.
Guess not, Edwin.
Go,
Or,
you can take
everybody's
over.
on mute. Figuring out how to unmute. Anyway, since we're still right on schedule, thanks for your presentation, Edwin, and for the experiment. I think it it showed us a few things. I just want to remind everybody that the questionnaire, if you haven't done so yet, please don't forget to fill it out. It helps us, but I think also yourself, because then we can decide how to move forward. And I think we will be back here in 5 minutes in 2015. If you want to add anything, Edwin, or okay, then see you in 5 minutes.
So it is a 8:15. I would say let's continue. Are you ready, Patrick?
Yes, I think I'm ready.
Okay, so thank you. Everyone is hopefully back again. I can tell you that we already in 20 filled out questionnaires. That's great.
Excellent.
So next one will be Patrick with his FlashDev framework. Stage is yours. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. I will start sharing my screen. Can you please let me know if you see it?
I can see it.
A welcome screen if all went well. So I'm actually a bit nervous because this is the first time I present this new this idea of mine for the first time. So I actually wrote it out in a speech. So I'm going to use that as a little bit of a handout for myself. So what I'll be doing is introducing FlashDev, which is a framework I created to help people on their journey to become more agile in the hardware development. So first, a little bit about myself. My name is Patrick Verbruggen. I'm married. I have 2 kids, and I live in Uden, which is a small town in the south of the Netherlands. And many years ago, I studied mechanical engineering with a major in mechatronics. And actually, at the same time, I also did some software development, started as a hobby and then did it a few years professionally. This actually provided me with a lot of insights from both worlds, which was really nice to combine the stuff I learned in software development to also use that for hardware development. So I worked at a company called Van der Lande for many years. Van der Lande is known for baggage handling systems at all the major airports in the world. I think everybody has used one of their systems at least once in their life. But also parcel handling systems and distribution systems like Amazon and DHL and all the bigger companies. So they built rather, at least complicated, I would say complex systems full of hardware. I had various roles there. I started as in technical documentation. I was a lead engineer for several years doing new innovations. I was a project leader for several years, and actually during that time I discovered that the traditional way of developing all of that didn't really fit. It just didn't work. So in reality, people were just ignoring a lot of the processes and doing it because otherwise they couldn't get it done. And so we started experimenting also with agilic things, or so to say, without even calling it agile at that time. So that was about 10 years ago. I think we started doing some small stuff. And yeah, about 5 years ago, I became the coach for the R&D department, helping teams to become more agile. Well, actually, I was still learning a lot at the same time myself. So that was quite a stressful time, but also really fun and really good. So you see some pictures I got when I left Van der Lande, because I followed a long-lasting dream of mine, which is to start my own company. And I did that about 2 years ago. It's a one-man company. Thanks, Joe. So I really try to focus on agile hardware, coaching, training, and at the same time, 2 years ago, I created the first version of FlashDev, that framework, which I'll be explaining more later. Also partly for myself to really get some structure in all the things you can do in hardware, how to make this tangible. With that, I got an assignment at Philips Healthcare, where I was an agile hardware coach and at the same time was Scrum Master for 2 hardware teams. And I got these 2 great T-shirts when I left, so it's really great to have been there, and I learned a lot. So hopefully I learned them as well a little bit, and I got a Corona haircut there. It's finally gone. Thanks. And maybe also this. Ever since I finished my education and started working, I always felt like there must be a better way of doing things. So I've always I really believe that we can do it in a way that brings happiness and satisfaction to everybody, to developers, customers, and the business. And that's actually what's been motivating me for all these years. So if you look in the world where I think agile hardware is really applicable, then these are a few examples. So on the top left, you see the Philips Healthcare, and you see Van der Lande next to it. But also here on the right, you see SpaceX, Tesla, Saab, Gripen. I think Joe might be telling us a little bit more about that later. They are really far ahead, I think, in agile thinking and agile doing. So we can learn a lot from that and get some real great inspiration. And then you see examples of other companies around here, ASML, for instance, here. This is OC, big printers, and other examples that are in various stages of agility. I think most of them are really starting and trying and learning as they go. And the center place here, I put the Formula One, because they're commonly known as the fastest R&D in the world. So it's not just a sport that's cool to watch, I think, but it's also the development behind it that's really cool to watch and learn from. Actually, they every next race, so that's in 1 or 2 weeks, they have new stuff from an idea to realization in that short time. So they really tell us that it's possible. So here is FlashDev. It's actually a website, and it's built like a house. So for those who are familiar with Lean, it looks a lot like a Lean house. and it has a lot of commonalities with that. It has a roof, which is the goal, which is all about why are we actually wanting to use agility in our development, and where do we want to go? What's our problem that we're solving? And at the bottom you see the foundation. That's really, like Paolo shared, the iceberg under the water, really the mindset and the values and the beliefs that we have to make it actually work. And in between you see a lot of good practices. So there's 4 pillars, and I will briefly go through each one of them. And here all the way at the bottom you see the journey, so that will help you how to make the steps to actually get there. So what this is really a website. I can maybe quickly show the real life website. So if you go there, you can just hover over it and just click somewhere, and it will provide you a lot of information, and hopefully that will help you to find your own way. See if I can get back to where I was.
Patrick, I didn't see the site. I still saw FlashDev the whole time.
Oh, right. Of course, because I'm sharing the the PowerPoint and not the. 1 second. Can I quickly change that? So I have to do a new share, then go to, where's my website?
Software is indeed complex.
Shouldn't be so complex, but I'm somehow not seeing the screen that I'm looking for.
I just went to the website myself, so I've got it open here in my browser.
And some people put the link in the chat as well if you want to.
Okay, great. Then I'll just stay in the presentation for now. And oh, I have to go back 1 slide. So, but anyway, of course, if you just go to the website and you hover over it, you will see, and you can click on it and you can find all kinds of information. I have to warn you, this is really, it's a second version, I would say. I've been working on it recently to improve it, but it's still, yeah, I think there's much to improve here, but I think there's already a lot in there that could help you. And I also would like to encourage you to help me out in this and provide me with feedback or whatever you can. So I would consider this whole thing as a bit of a travel guide on your way to Agile hardware. So it serves both as a framework, so it has some structure in it, so that makes it easier for you to determine in which area could we improve and what could we do there. So it makes it easier to find information as well. And it's also a body of knowledge, so really to share insights, movies, whatever we can find. It's not a framework as in Scrum or Safe, because it doesn't have any roles or events or anything. It's really about like a pair of glasses or even a UV light that sheds some light on Agile hardware, and it works seamlessly with Scrum or Safe or Scrum at Scale or whatever framework you choose to use. So if you look at the goal, this is really about, like Edwin already said as well, that there's really a lot about complexity, but there's also other things like the need for speed. We market cycles are getting shorter. There's a lot of risk that we want to address early and continuously. And then once we're on our way, things tend to change. So there's a lot going on that we want to tackle. And I think what we are striving for is not to let that overcome us so that it becomes a survival mode, but actually to be ahead of that, to really proactively build an organization that can handle that. Like a ship going into the storm, you want to be ready for that storm and not starting to work on it when it hits you. But that's typically actually what normally happens in the world, because we are always too busy to to work on our daily concerns and tend to postpone all the improvements a little bit. So yes, we would like to go somewhere where it's really nice, and that will take time, but it's always good to have a clear picture of where you would like to be in a certain time. So when you are struggling, that every now and then you can sit back and say, okay, what direction were we going again? The foundation is like we said before, it's really about mindset, about culture. And that's not something you can just push in, like Paolo said, that this has to grow. This comes from insights, from actually trying stuff and seeing that it works better than what you did before. And also a lot of unlearning, I would say. So what I did is I think I really enjoy the mindsets of lean, agile, and systems thinking. And on top of that, I think we could do with a little bit of specifically for agile hardware. So I won't go into detail here. You can find a little bit more on the website. But I think the two on the left here are a bit special. I think the first one, can do, is really about hardware is quite challenging, especially because it's rather new. There's not a lot of use cases to draw on. There's not a lot of people who have experience with it yet. And there are quite a few challenges out there. So it really requires a can-do mindset, not like, okay, this is difficult, we cannot do this because, sure, that's true. But I think it really matters if you have that. And the second one, I think there should be a balance in many things. It's not about just speed, not to just be the fastest. It depends on a lot of factors and trade-off decisions that you have to make to find what is the perfect balance, or the best balance for your organization, for your team, for your product at that time. And maybe you want to improve that over time or when things change. The other things I'm going to skip for now. So the first pillar is all about flow. So there's really things that we draw from lean, and it's all about chopping up our big development into small pieces. And like I saw that in many of the earlier questions, that is typically quite difficult, or at least it's experienced as difficult. I think it also has to do because we're not so experienced at doing that. And I think one of the things it really requires that we go back to what value actually is, and that will help you a lot in making smaller parts. And this is too much to dive into that right now, but a few examples you see on the right. So with that car, just a few examples, like you could add something like a tire pressure sensor that wasn't there before maybe, and really have a very, very basic version of that first time. Or you could say, well, it's not about adding something, it's about improving something, like the performance, in this case, the increased driving range. Or you could look at things like reliability or whatever you want, and you can make very small steps there. Or fix an issue that was there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do that all at once. So you can chop that up into smaller bits, and until you're satisfied enough, so you really fix the heater issue to a point where you want to release it to the world, or you really have a tire pressure sensor that's good enough to bring out to the world, or you have sufficient driving range that it makes it interesting, or whatever, you decide when you want to release it. And for flow, there's really two levels of dealing with that, I think. So at the top level, it's about guiding flow. So it's about the long-term ideas of where do we want to go. We want to go to Mars to colonize, for instance, and we want to make a few big steps in between. And those are guidelines on your way, and not fixed scope, fixed time milestones, so to say, but they really help you to keep the bigger picture in mind. And then, of course, in day-to-day decision making, like how do we split this? How do we prioritize this? This is all about managing the flow. Then on the right, you find the other important pillar, and that is really about the organization. So a lot of the agility actually comes from the organization. Typically, organizations are really, really slow. I mean, if a 4% time efficiency is really common. That means that if you, for instance, order a proto and it takes several hours to actually build it, then it could easily take 4 weeks to get it. So where did all that time go? Well, it's actually waiting. It's just sitting at different places and just collecting dust, so to say. And most of this is actually invisible, so we don't even see it happening. We just see the results, and we tend to accept it as if it's normal, but it is not. And I think there's a lot we can do. And one of the things we can do is at least to start with getting the right people in the right team. So a lot of those dependencies where you normally have to wait are already gone. And of course, you get a lot of other benefits like really you get a quality, you get a team spirit, there's many things more. But it's also about dependencies. And then of course, we have a lot of dependencies with people that might not be in your team because a team can only be so big. And then it's about trying to reduce the dependencies that we have and that are really not productive. And the dependencies that we do need is finding a good way to work with them. And one of those things is like DevOps. So our, if you would call it internal customers, so that the operations guys, the factory, the purchasing, all those people that we need to work with, we have to work with them really closely to make sure that it doesn't take too much time. And on top of that, it requires a lot of good leadership and a special form of leadership. So not the leadership that's telling you what to do. It's more like a servant leadership. Leadership that actually allows you to make your own decisions. So you don't have to wait for a manager to make a decision that takes him 5 minutes and sits on his desk for 2 days. That's so a lot of the time that we want to save to actually enable the flow that we need to enable the fast way of developing is in the organization. Then the pillars, I'm just looking at my time. Okay, I'll just keep on going quickly. Yeah, so the 2 inner pillars are a bit like a twin. So you have the virtual world and the physical world. In the virtual world is all about thoughts and bytes. So it's thinking like architecture, like design. It's happening in your head. It goes with the speed of light, so to say. And the other thing is about models and digital twins and all kinds of other things that can really help you out because it's software, it's fast. You can use all the benefits that you can use in software, like automated testing. You can do so many things that are very, well, cheap, so to say, compared to doing it in a hardware world, and very fast. So you can speed up enormously. So things like an architecture where you have modularity. So you can actually say, okay, if we have a change in one part, it doesn't affect the other parts. So that makes it easier to do it. And of course, you need very good interfaces. And I think it's also something that Joe will be talking about later, the interface where you really not just make a contract about, okay, if we agree that this is how we're going to do it, then we can each go our own way and not spend too much time on it every time, but also make it very robust or flexible. So if you do have some changes that you didn't realize before, that it doesn't immediately impact your interface. And actually a little bit the same is how you design things. If you design it first time right, so to say, very small and cheap and everything, then yeah, you're really limiting your agility. And a lot of times it is not necessary at all. I saw this at OC printing. They just oversized their cabinets. They oversized components, and in that way it was easy to handle any kind of change. Digital twins is, yeah, that's really cool for a lot of companies. I think it's more like a future thing. Some of them are already starting with it, but it's yeah, getting data back from real life systems to the thing you're developing. It's enormously helping. The last pillar is about the physical world. So every now and then, of course, you do need to get physical, right? I mean, models are not always perfect, or it may be actually not worth it to build a whole model, or not even physically possible to build a model. or you just want to see it, touch it, feel it. The proof is in the pudding, so to say. And that's when you really want to go to the physical world. And if you want to go to the physical world, then let's make that an easy step, or as fast as possible, and against an affordable price. And that means, first of all, you want to have rapid prototyping. So either that's have your own, what they call desktop factory, where you have small things like a 3D printer or a small CNC machine or whatever in your own workshop, and just do it yourself, or have contracts with suppliers that can deliver really fast. And the next step is, of course, when you have the part, make sure that you can integrate and test it really fast. So design for testing, make sure that you have test scripts or robots that can even do the testing for you, plug and play kind of things that you can easily swap things around. Actually, what it really requires is do everything you do knowing that you want to be agile. I think that's one of the key elements here. And of course, when we have done the development and we know this is quite good, we want to also get it through manufacturing rapidly, because otherwise it's just sitting there and waiting for the next step they can take on manufacturing. I think this is what you, Joe, call extreme manufacturing, I think. So I'll leave that to you. Then the last step is really about the journey. So of course, we want to get to somewhere where it looks great, right? But of course, that's not reality to expect that will happen in a few days. That will take time. And on that way, you will face challenges. You will get annoyed every now and then trying to improve stuff. And yeah, it will take a lot of perseverance. It's not just challenging the normal change challenges that you have. It's also, you have to go to an agile, a new mindset. So that's also very difficult. And then on top of that, you get all these hardware aspects that are also challenging. So it is not easy, but it's really worth it, and it can be done. And every little step you take is a step closer to where you want to be. And in that sense, it's like build your organization in the same way as you build your product. Do it agile, do it iteratively, add little things, try to change it, and with every step it gets better. So I have no idea how I was in time, but thanks anyway. And is there any time left for questions, Edwin? I have no idea, because I don't.
Actually, you're quite in time. So a short question you could answer if there is a short question.
Okay, yeah, shoot.
I loved everything you just said and wrote. In particular, I wanted to know more about the hardware automation. I think you call it extreme automation or hyper automation. Anything more you'd like to share on that?
Yeah, I think one of the key factors is if you automate things, it not only gets faster and less expensive, it also takes away a lot of the annoying work that we normally have to do. But most importantly, by doing that, it makes it easier to make a little change and test that. So we can test automatically in the software world, where we have models like CAD models or computational flow diagram diagnostics, or whatever kind of models that we use. So that there's a lot of options to automate there, or automatic calculations, or whatever you want. And I think also in the physical world, there's also a lot of room for automation. I've seen automated test units where you can just put something in, and then you run a script, and more and more people are starting to use robots because they're very flexible. So you can just change your test setup in minutes, so to say, and that makes it easier to really do some regression tests and all of that. Is that what you? Yeah. So yeah, hyper automation, automate the shit out of it. Okay, if there are no more questions.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
My pleasure.
Great presentation.
Okay, I'll
so
stop sharing. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much. So we have the last small break before we are going to move to the last presentation for today, and that's the session by Joe Justice about Agile hardware and his experiences, or basically about your questions about it, if I've understood it correctly. So we'll see you in 5 minutes.
Then thanks all, and welcome back. And let's stay with us for these last, I would say, about 30 minutes. And because I really enjoy to hear Joe speaking. He has a lot of experience and a lot of really great insights to share. So let's hear it. I don't hope I have to raise the expectations too high, Joe, but I think you can handle it easily.
Patrick, you're too kind. You're too kind. It is an honor for me to be present here, to see a community has grown to this level already around Agile hardware, and for me to participate in it. This is a dream come true for me. Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you so much, Edwin. Thank you so much, Paolo. Should I begin now?
Yeah, please.
There's a 25-minute time box. I actually think it's 20 minutes now. That's just fine. I'll try to cover interesting, thought-provoking, useful information in a small amount of time, I hope.
You get 25.
Cheating the schedule already, and we haven't even begun. In 2006, I began building cars with Agile methods. I founded a company called Wikispeed that eventually grew to 4,000 participants in more than 20 countries around the world. In 2012, we became the first automotive manufacturer to accept Bitcoin. Bitcoin was worth about $8 US a coin in 2012. And recently, Bitcoin has crossed $60,000 US a coin. The point I want to make here is an Agile mindset will allow compartmentalized risk taking at a level that a waterfall mindset will not. And one indication of an Agile mindset at the leadership portion of a company is how they treat and manage their finances. And you can see this clearly from the beginning. Some of you may know at Tesla, which is now the world's most valuable automotive manufacturing company, their CFO also has the title, they've changed their title to be Master of Coin. That's actually their public title. In 2020, I joined Tesla, and I operated a program there called Agile at Tesla. And that was during Tesla's 5-to-1 stock split, which is one of the largest and most rapid rises in financial valuation of any company in the history of publicly traded markets. And I'm not saying I caused the 5-to-1 stock split. What I want to say is I was present in the company when it happened, so I got to see what type of company practices made that possible. And I did create some of those practices, which is what I'd like to share with you. The executives get it. At the executive level in Europe, in Japan, in the United States, the statement is the same: faster pace of innovation. Volkmar Denner, chair and CEO of Bosch, told me for Bosch, agility is crucial. It allows us to adjust to the increasing speed of change around us. Agility allows us to remain in a position as a market leader. Akio Toyoda, chair of CEO, says the most important job for the CEO is to find where change is happening in the company and make it faster. Fuel the change point. He's not saying the goal is lean. He's not saying it's single one-piece continuous flow. The chair and CEO of Toyota is saying the job of the CEO is to find where change is happening and fuel it, make it faster. In Europe, Herbert Diess is saying it's all about speed. The big question is, are we fast enough? If we continue at our current speed, it's going to be very tough. And Elon Musk, my CEO, says pace of innovation is all that matters in the long run. The point I'm going to try to make here, when I then show the technical practices in Tesla, is they are all about faster pace of innovation. That is it. That is the goal. And in Europe and in Japan, the executives agree. Let's look at a phase gate waterfall approval process. This is an actual phase gate approval process from a company headquartered in the United States that works globally. I imagine it's not too different than phase gate waterfall approval processes worldwide. They start with an overall project plan. If it's funded, it progresses to a marketing plan. If that's funded, it updates the business plan. If that's funded, it updates a validated, robust product. Now, already there's not much agility left. You already have a robust product and a plan. At this point, all the project managers are being told to manage to the plan and avoid change. And some of them misunderstand lean and use lean as an excuse, saying what we need to do is minimize variance. And this is, of course, completely incorrect. If the robust product is funded, it moves to field test. If that's funded, it will move to technical service plan. If that's funded, it will move to manufacturing and supply chain. And what happens here is any knowledge that would come from your supply chain partners is not allowed to change this generation of the product. It's already locked in, and we don't get the advantages of lean agile procurement, which has been very well described by Mirko Kleiner and won the European Procurement Awards, I believe it was last year. Then we move into IP gathering, and then we move into maintenance. What this model has created to keep making money. It's decreased the value of innovation. And this is then not surprising at all. When you do have an agile hardware competitor, these companies simply lose. They lose very quickly. A minor model change at a company like Daimler is a 2.5-year project. A major model change at a company like Porsche, part of the Volkswagen Group, is a 7 to 14-year project. And it's because of this model. Paolo earlier brought up Conway's law, saying that if a company is managed in this waterfall phase gate process, it's then visible in the products and the speed at which the product changes. If you're looking to judge, is a company agile, the one criteria I will encourage you to judge it on is what's the pace of new product release and how much innovation is in each new product release. And if product release is a 2.5-year process, I'll say the company is not yet very agile. They're running a 2.5-year sprint. So here is how new product introduction works in Tesla. Inside the factory, you have parts flowing across the factory floor. And if you were to tape off a square, or really a hexagon, of the factory floor, which is in the foreword to Paolo Sammicheli's book, Scrum for Hardware. If you were to tape off an area of the factory and measure the parts coming in, and then you quantify, you add up the parts that are inside that square, and then you count the value-added steps that happen in that square. You've now identified what's called a lean cell. That lean cell in this example I'm drawing here might install a heat pump. It might glue a plastic garnish or trim around the heat pump, and you might install rivets into a part of the car body, the car chassis. These parts change about every 3 hours. The sprint length is about every 3 hours. What that means is if you're working inside this lean cell, parts you have never seen before arrive approximately every 3 hours. So how do you use that? How do you use parts you've never seen before? There's something called a definition of ready. And running Agile at Tesla, this is something I did a lot of, is writing, publishing, and making visible the definition of ready. and definition of done. The definition of ready is artificial intelligence driven. It's machine vision, it's machine learning, it's big monitors, and there's red light, green light. The green light says, although you've never seen this part before, it's going to work. Take it, install it, make it work. A red light means these parts are not going to fit your current process. You need to shut down your lean cell and retool to figure out how to incorporate these parts. That's DOR. And at the same time, you have a DOD. You have machine vision, machine learning, and robotic test telling you, is what is about to exit your lean cell going to be compatible with lean cells further out in the process? And a red light means shut down your lean cell, retool, you're failing your test. And green means go, flow. And this is managed by a small cross-functional self-organizing development team. They program robots, they machine tools, they lift equipment, they pull carts, they run a huge number of software pieces, mostly from your phone. It's mostly done on apps. There are laptops, but it's mostly phone driven. Now, what about new product introduction? We add to this something called a router. The router is controlled by software. You can control it from your phone via apps or tablets that are stationed around. And what the router does is branch off product. It determines how many products go to your lean cell or another lean cell. And anytime we do something to the inputs, we do the same thing to the outputs. So we have a router that can branch product back in. And to start new product introduction, we branch exactly one car. So you have one car sitting on an empty piece of concrete in the factory. And you form a small, co-located, cross-functional development team. And their job is to improve that car. An example of one of these improvements would be a heated charging port. In cold weather, ice can form over a charging port or even a gas cap on a car. And you'd have to break the ice to be able to fill your car with gasoline, or in Tesla's case, to plug in the charger. So one team's job is to create an electric heater over the charge port that detects if you're about to charge and thaws, melts the ice, and even just warms up the charging port so it's ready to receive the charger. They will do that to exactly one car. And they will work with suppliers if the suppliers can deliver in less than 24 hours. Very few suppliers can, so most of this is machined in-house. Tesla is vertically integrated out of necessity. They would rather work with suppliers. They prefer to work with suppliers. Lean Agile procurement is awesome, but not many suppliers will work in a less than 24-hour turnaround. So Tesla has no choice but to make them themselves. So you have a group of people sitting on the concrete floor with laptops, drawing CAD, updating bills of materials, working with some suppliers and managing those vendors. They're also machining parts. The same people on the laptops are also running machining equipment. It's a cross-functional team. They are doing some 3D printing, and they get one car, exactly one car, to have a heated charging port. If the automated tests, the artificial intelligence, the machine vision passes definition of done, and the light turns green, that one car is branched into production. It doesn't mean that on January 1st, 2021, every car has a heated charge port. It means there's one, and that may or may not be your car. It's sold to a customer. This group's job, the same group, is now to increase the speed of production in this new lean cell. This is what Elon Musk calls the production ramp. They've made one car that passed test and it was sold. Their job is now to make another one and to systematize, institutionalize, industrialize, automate that process. And they increase the number of cars that can be produced that pass the tests with that electric heated charge port. Eventually, 100% of production is branched to this lean cell. And now 100% of cars sold have heated charge ports, which they do. The previous lean cell is either kept online in case we need to fail back to the previous build cycle, or it's dismantled to make room for another pilot line. So new product introduction is a pilot line in the factory. New product development happens in the factory at the pilot line. This is what's called Area 51 in Tesla. And it's the one place they won't show you on a factory tour. They won't take you to Area 51, which is where these pilot lines are made. But you can read all about them. If you look at Tesla's open hiring positions right now, they list these. They say seating upholsterer, wanted experience, project management, CNC machining, software development, new product introduction, pilot line work, and mass manufacturing. That's a job description in Tesla. By the way, there are no jobs where you don't lift 20 kilograms. They don't exist. There are Agile coaches, but you also build cars. Running Agile at Tesla, I worked with coaches. I worked with trainers. I was a coach. I was a trainer. And I built cars. And I programmed robots. And I fixed jammed robots. And all, I mean, you work. You actually build. So this is what cross-functional means. If you do only one thing, like you only write software, you're what's called an intern. You need to do 3 production operations well to become an employee. And so you skill up. Yeah, it's expected you can write software scripts. It's expected you can program robots. It's expected you can pull carts of equipment. And now this new product introduction model can fit. For information on the technical practices that make this work, I highly recommend Paolo Sammicheli's book, Scrum for Hardware. He shared a link for a free copy of the book. Here's a link for a free preview. You can take a screen capture right now if you like for the free preview. The book is phenomenal. If you like, the company structure model and the Agile transformation model and how to operate Agile at Tesla is in a book I've recently published in English and Japanese called Scrum Master, the Agile Training Seminar for Business Performance. You can take a screen capture of this link if you want and enjoy the free preview here. I would love that. Here's what it really looks like. Like Patrick was describing to us, it's robots everywhere. And you have small co-located cross-functional teams that tend the robots and lift 20 kilograms, program, and develop new product. Because the parts these robots are going to move are different about every 3 hours, the robots have flexible hands. And the humans help oversee the robots' self-programming to interact with the new parts. The parts, the areas where they mate, their interfaces, are intentionally simple. The robots don't care. They could be super complicated, but humans care. The reason the interfaces are simplified is to reduce cognitive complexity. So humans can more easily think about the mating surface between these parts. The interfaces can change at any time, but the parts on either side of the interface have to be updated at the same time in concert. And that's where patterns like the Meta-Scrum pattern are very useful to coordinate across teams. Automation in software and hardware and management with test in the loop is in fact the answer. Humans are for creative problem solving. Automation is for everything else. I'm Joe Justice. I'm the author of the Scrum Hardware Guide. I chair the Agile Business Institute. I'm the creator of the Extreme Manufacturing Methods. I'm thrilled to be part of Where Hardware Meets Software as a meetup. It's been an honor to learn from Patrick, to learn from Edwin, to learn from Paolo, and I'm happy to contribute what I can as well. It looks like there's 2 minutes for questions if anyone would like any, and I'm grateful for your time.
I think I saw a question in the chat regarding
oh yeah, from Cohen. Yeah, so every Tesla is potentially unique, every single one. And at SpaceX, it's the same. Every engine, every rocket is unique. So first, that means you have a massive Agile IT project. So you track as a digital twin every product you make. So you know which vehicle had which adhesive, for example, around the windshield, because that could be unique per car. So LinkedIn and Zing track people like this. Zing tracks as a digital twin all 7.8 billion people on the planet Earth, whether they have a Zing account or not. And they track who your connections are and even who your connections were before. It's 4-dimensional. It includes time. And they attempt to track what type of phone they think you have and what apps are installed on that phone, and even what apps used to be installed on that phone. That's what a digital twin does. So you need a digital twin of your products so you can track your products as unique entities over time. That is a significant IT project. Then you need automated testing. Some people don't know. Autopilot, or some level of human driving assists, comes from something called factory mode. The real purpose is factory mode. What factory mode is every Tesla, and SpaceX does the same thing. Every Tesla puts itself through every road legal certification test that's not destructive before it's sold. Every single one. Then 1 out of every N cars are destructively tested, and the number N, how many cars it is between N, depends on what's been changing recently. How to say this right? So every single car has put itself through all certification tests that aren't destructive, and then there's crash testing on site for 1 out of every N. The regulators are brought to the factory. So the government approvers come to the factory and make real-time approvals of essentially every single car. Every single car, and rockets for SpaceX, is essentially approved as a unique entity. Tesla sells cars in Europe right now. In fact, in some categories, they're the best-selling cars in Europe, depending on the category. And each car is potentially unique. So this does happen, it does work. It has to do with unit testing. Every unit of the product is tested. That's what these definitions of ready and definitions of done help us accomplish. Then there's integration testing and regression testing and simulated user acceptance testing. And then with the regulators in the factory, the approvers, the credentialing institutes in the factory, they essentially approve every unit. Oh, well, hey, thanks, Ed.
Is that an answer for you, Koen? Oh, I know Koen, and he just sent me a message from my phone. My computer is frozen. Sorry to hear that, Koen. I hope you you heard the answer. And by the way, maybe to add, Joe, I think you also used some officially approved crash test modeling, so you don't have to actually run every car through a crash test, but you can also say, okay, this is a validated model, so we can show you that this change is actually okay.
The digital twins are so accurate now, including most types of materials, not all, but most types of materials for crash testing, that a digital twin crash test is valid and accepted for road legal certification. So some types, actually in most cases, crash testing is no longer required. The cars are still crash tested 1 out of every N, but not for verification testing. It's to verify the digital twin. Is the digital twin behaving correctly? That's been known since 2010, since Wikispeed started doing that. But of course, Tesla does the same thing.
Yeah.
I see a hand from N. Tchaikovsky.
Yes, hello, Joe. Thank you very much for your presentation. I was not aware that you're such an expert. Lucky that I joined. I have a question to you about medical device industry. I think this is one of the highly regulated industries, maybe one of the most highly regulated. And I would like to learn a bit more about the certification processes and okay, not really certification, but how does Agile work in industry like medical industry or maybe aerospace, where usually you don't bring it to the end customer. So you're not driven by the market, you're driven by maybe more or less traditional organizations, which maybe are not so keen to welcome change and so much, let's say, transformation in a short amount of time?
Well, let me see if I understand you. So automotive transport is the most regulated industry in the world by number of laws written about it. It is the most constrained by number of laws, automotive transport, even more than medical devices. But that said, some of you in this call work in medical and aerospace. I did also, well here, I'll just show you. I think one of the questions was, how does this work in aerospace? Here's how it works in aerospace. Here is SpaceX. And this is the modularity that Paolo and Patrick and Edwin referred to. This is the Falcon Heavy. It's the heaviest payload operational rocket in the world. It's an extra large project. And SpaceX splits projects into parallel executable projects, Agile. So you have Agile teams working in parallel, not dependent, not waiting on each other, which is what Paolo was talking about. A Falcon Heavy is made out of 3 Falcon 9 rockets. So that extra large rocket is 3 large rockets connected together. A Falcon 9 rocket is made out of 9 Merlin engines. A Merlin engine for a company like SpaceX is an extra small project. And Elon Musk, the CEO of SpaceX and Tesla, has famously said they've never made 2 Merlin engines the same. Every single one is a set of improvements to be superior to the previous one. Every single one is new product development. When SpaceX has completed 9 Merlin engines, all unique, they have a Falcon 9 rocket. When they've completed 27 Merlin engines, they have a Falcon Heavy rocket. And this is how SpaceX reduces their sprint length, by focusing on massively parallel execution with massively parallel R&D. A point I want to make is there's no phases. There's no build phase. There's no test and verification phase. It doesn't exist. There's a factory floor where there are lean cells, well, agile cells is what you have to call them now, that are making new product development on the floor, and they branch in as they finish. And that's it. There's no phase. I teach what's called an Agile hardware developer course where we practice this, we do it, and people hate it. They say, but I thought Agile was doing our same phase gate model and using Jira. Or they say, I thought Agile was using our same phase gate model, but implementing release trains. And I say the definition of Agile is a faster pace of new product release with more innovation. And that means we're not going to be using phases anymore. We're going to be doing this. We're going to split your rocket into 27 extra small projects and execute them in parallel without phases. And we're going to do more testing. We're going to do automated testing. And that links to a question, what about long running tests, particularly accelerated where? If you want fast innovation, you don't have a test phase at the end for where. Instead, you have a battery, you have a library of materials aging tests. And you say, how do these materials perform over time? And if you say this alloy tends to perform like this over time in these heat cycles, we know it works. It's in your approved library. And you work with materials in your approved library. Meanwhile, Agile teams focus on only adding more materials to the approved library, and that never ends. So there are massive farms of accelerated aging tests that never stop. And more and more and more materials are put in, but they don't put final parts in there. They don't need to. That's what digital twins are for. The digital twins are accurate because they're running off of the verified accelerated aging per material type. This is a mindset change. You don't have test and verification at the end. It's test driven. So your digital twins determine at design time what you're going to mass manufacture. And this is how it becomes phaseless. If folks want to practice that, you can join me in the Agile Hardware Developer class. I just tried to unsell it by saying people hate it, and they do. It's because it's actually how to develop hardware in less than a week. And a lot of people don't want to do that. They want to take 2 or 3 years, but do it with Jira tickets or do it with a release planning. And that's not going to have you compete with SpaceX or Tesla or Neuralink or OpenAI. And I'd like to be just a little bit more clear about that. No, that's another conversation. And I see there's other questions in hands.
Yeah,
I will be able to the course here, though.
We have to look at the time, and I think we have time for one more question. I think Ferdinand, maybe you can quickly share your.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Joe, for answering my first question already. But I'm still curious to hear more about unit testing in the hardware context. So can you tell a little bit more about how that works? How do you do test automation on hardware level?
Yeah, I like how Patrick introduced some of this. So for example, a heat pump in a Tesla, you would have a test fixture that looks just like what Paolo Sammicheli showed, that rig that was made out of wood and then out of metal, and then the part that's safety approved for production use. It looks just like that. And you stick a heat pump in there and you have a laptop running it through automated every type of cycle and operation it could do. Now, every time that becomes controllable by your phone. So you can be on-site, off-site, anywhere in the world and be running and observing those tests. And if you need to, you have a bank of those, you have a farm of those running many at once. So that's unit tests. Does the heat pump perform in isolation with excellence? And then we have integration tests, and that's always robotic. Can the robot fit that heat pump into the rest of the interior package? And then does the interior package integrate successfully into the rest of the car? And then you have regression test, and that's what every car puts itself through, and that's called factory mode. Is it fully compliant with all road legal tests that are non-destructive? And that includes water penetration testing, that includes simulated theft attempts, it includes black hat, gray hat, white hat, hacking attempts, RF shielding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's integration tests. And that's the unit test to integration test to regression test cycle. Ferdinand, did I connect with where you're coming from, or did I misunderstand the question?
It gives an idea, but it also triggers new questions, but that's fine for now.
Thank you for the great question.
A nice little bridge to that this is, of course, like Edwin will probably explain, not a one-time thing. So we actually set up this meetup to be able to dive deep into questions like that. But to round off, thanks so much, Joe. I think this was very great talk, very inspirational, and also food for thought, so to say. So thank you so much for spending your time here and joining us. And yeah, Edwin, I think you great. I think you wanted to have a few minutes to do some closure.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Patrick. And Joe, thank you as well. Basically, I will not take more than 10 minutes of your time, basically. First of all, I would like to thank all of the speakers of tonight for their contributions. And I would like to thank you all for adding such a diversity on topics around this edge between hardware and software. As I already promised in the beginning, I would like to share with you shortly the intermediate results so far from the questionnaire. 23 people already had filled them out. Of course, it will stay open afterwards, so you can fill out later if you want to. So one moment, I have to share my screen first and not forget to press the right button, right? So if everything is okay, you can see my screen now. Can someone confirm? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Confirm.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
So,
I can see.
Okay, we have 23 participants already completely filling out the questionnaire. I hope there will be more, of course. and I will share some of the results. Just to give you some impression, and I will not go through all questions, but actually I will take the ones with a nice pass, etc. One of the questions was about where do you come from, what kind of roles do you have, and as I would have expected, many of us are busy in the line of Agile Coach, Scrum Master, or Product Owner. Nevertheless, I feel it's great to see that there are leaders and managers amongst us, and people who do not, one of the described items did not apply to. Another question was about the networking function, how important you feel it is. You can see basically the values are mostly at the higher end. So most people think, hey, it's great that we have a platform where we can meet people, connect to each other, and trying to find ways to help each other. Same about how valuable is the expertise sharing functions, the expertise sharing function we can do so that we can dare to share things. Actually, I really love the fact that we have high values around 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 for 2/3 of the people saying, hey, that's great that we can do this. About the knowledge base function, the score is a little bit relatively lower than the previous question, but actually still quite high. 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10. Okay. I asked the question, how much can organized open spaces help you to keep involved? A majority scores rather high and say, okay, that's a great way to help us. Of course, I will not discuss the open question here. I have seen that multiple ideas have been brought to our attention and we will explore that separately. But just reading textual answers is not going to help you to give some impression what your opinion is. And the last question I would like to share now for tonight is that how much can organizing a fishbowl can keep you involved? And I love the fact that 70% scores this with a 7 or 8 out of 10. So we are certainly going to look into ways in having this kind of fishbowls all together. So having said that, I would like to thank my co-host, Patrick Verbruggen, for supporting me, giving feedback on the content side. So keeping the content at a high level, so to say. I think that 4 eyes principle is always helping us. And I would, at last but not least, thank you all for attending this meetup. And I hope to see you next time at the next event we are going to organize. I would say thank you for staying with us and have a good night or a good day for Joe, because I know he just started this day. And thank you very much.